Like my camera stopped. I'm new at this, so this is my first experience at trying to record something for beginners, but I thought I'd give it a shot. So in the first circle, which I'm not sure whether you saw all of it, I drew my Easter egg shape, and then I drew a second one just with water. So this is teaching you the wet on wet technique. And you should probably have the 3 puddles, of your yellow, blue, and red. In my case, I probably need a bit more yellow. I seem to be running low on that, so I'm just gonna fill that up. The other thing you can do is you can always just spray your palette with a bit of water and then add your paint, and that helps you mix, a bigger puddle on the palette. If this looks dry, you don't have enough paint there. You should see a fairly big puddle, and that's one of the common mistakes I see is, you end up having a dried out portion on your palette and you're trying to, activate that. So you just need to make sure you always have enough paint. And if that means you're mixing more paint than you actually need, that's fine too, because you will actually use it in the end. So that is my advice, is to always mix a bigger puddle than you need. The size of your palm at least is a good recommendation. Okay, so let's try this again. My first circle has started to dry, and it is it's not shiny, but you can see that it's wet in certain areas. So my paint is moving a little less than in the first case, and I'm going to mix these closer together this time so we can create a few different colors. Okay, and then I'm dabbing it off again on the sponge and adding my yellow, which we noted earlier doesn't move as fast. You can make sure that you get to the edges, because sometimes you don't get to the edges, but that will just help you round them out. Use the point of the brush, and away we go. So not so bad on that one. Now my second circle is already dried. I can just barely see that it's damp. So just for an exercise, let's drop some paint into the one that's barely dried, and you'll see it really isn't moving at all. I'm getting a soft edge, but I'm not getting the effect that I had on this other one. So this is really when you're applying paint onto just damp paper is what you end up with there. And what you could do is we could go around the outside again and add some water and see if we can get some of this stuff moving again. If you add too much water, which I just did, you'll see these little puddles forming on the outside. So your options are to move that water around a bit, to tilt your page, and just, if you got too much water, so you're seeing a big puddle form, then sop it up with your brush. So dab your brush on a paper towel or a sponge, and then sop up that extra water, and that will prevent it from, just sticking in one area where the water is and not moving too much. You want the circle evenly wet, and that's what we're trying to achieve here. So that looks pretty good. It's still pretty wet, so I think things are going to move very fast here, and they are. And you'll see I'm just touching it with the brush. I'm not pushing my brush in. I'm just touching it and letting the paint do its own thing. So we'll do that as we go around. Add some more yellow. And I got some puddling occurring over here too. Okay. And don't fuss with it too much. Like if you manipulate it too much, then you're just going to end up with one monochrome kind of color. So here we ended up with brown. So just don't spend too much time moving the paint around. Let it do its own thing. I'm trying to stop some of the stuff that it's not dry enough. So I'm going to pick it up again. And there we go. So now I've picked that up. It's still too wet to apply more in, but let's do one more of these. One more circle. I'm going to do two again so that I can tell the difference between, you know, very dry paper, damp paper, and wet paper. And that's one of the toughest things to learn with watercolor is how wet should my paper be when I apply the paint to it. So you want a nice glisten, but no puddles. And that's what I got here. And you want your paint to be kind of thick, but not too thick. So you're not going to take it right from the well as an example. Now over here it's a little drier. See that? It's not spreading out into that portion. So let's get some of this pink that loves to spread more. Okay. Dab off my brush, put it in the water, rinse out the last color, dab it off on the paper towel or your sponge, and away you go. Let's make a nice green here. Okay, and this one is just damp. So again, let's put some paint in there and see how much that moves. Not a lot. It still has a nice soft edge. It's funny how much that Queen Rose wants to move around. I like it. Okay. And maybe we'll just do Queen Rose and blue on this one. I'm adding a thicker paint as well. And here I'm moving it around. I'm not dabbing as much. I'm just moving it around. Okay. And this one here is still very wet. I could go back and add some paint into that. The base of it is not the best color, so it's not really gonna look too much, but it look too good, but it might look okay once we get some brighter colors in there. So let's try that. So that's the exercise. Now, yes, you could paint your Easter eggs on dry. So in that case, you would just start with, let's say I wanted an Easter egg with a pink top. I put my Queen Rose on, and it's a fairly watery mixture. And if you want to do, detailed work, often people work on dry, and you can still get some blending in between these colors, but it doesn't paint itself, so to speak. So one of the nice things about watercolor is it paints itself, but that one is not so bad. Kind of like that. I like the color combination. I'm making some purple here with the pink. But that is an example of making an Easter egg on dry. Okay, and then the other thing you could do is, let's say I wanted one that I want to paint over top, and I want some hard edges on it. So I'm going to make the shape, and then I'm going to let it dry. So we'll let this one dry for a bit, and we'll do another one like that, yellow one at the back. Yeah, you can see this. I'm going to do a yellow one. And then you can experiment with, okay, when we did this one, my paint was pretty wet and so was my brush, so everything blended together. What happens if I just take some ultramarine blue right from the palette and now drop it in one that has started to dry? So it's spreading less, but it's letting me make some cool, soft designs. So that's a fun exercise as well. Okay, this one's still pretty damp, but as that dries, my lines and what I add to it, the thicker my paint, the better likelihood that I can make something that has a straight line. Okay, not quite dry enough to do that, but let's do some more dots down here. Okay, and see if we can get this one to dry a bit more. I could try putting on a drier paint here. Okay. This one still looks wetter than that one, so we'll just wait a minute or two, and then we'll try this one. Yeah, it's starting to be a bit more in control. And also this depends on how thick your paint is. So if I take it right from the palette, it's going to spread less. Oops, my board tilted. Now this one looks pretty dry up here. So let's try that. Now I'm getting exactly what I'm putting in. So lots of control here. I could probably even start to do lines like that. Something like that, you know, whatever design you want on your Easter egg. But that is the difference between wet on wet and a very thick paint on dry. I'm still getting a little bit of a soft edge on these, but it's much drier than the other one. I can even put lines in. So you could use your skinny brush for doing that. But this one is still fairly damp. So it is. So that's the experiment that you can do. Besides the Easter eggs, you could make rocks, make a rock tower. Maybe we'll do that in the next class, but hopefully that's helpful, and have fun.